Hey, and welcome to the build tutorial for the 4-stage fuzz from our DIY offerings. Today I'm going to walk through building the 4-stage fuzz step by step, and you can build at home alongside with me. And we're going to learn a little bit, we're going to have fun. So let's dig into it right now. Alright, so let's start with step 1 on our build guide. We're going to do the power filtering like we do on every step. So for this step we're going to need 3 components. We're going to need a couple caps, and we're going to need a diode. Got our parts, and we're going to be interfacing with this top rail here. We're going to do our diode first, and we're going to bend this guy. And we're actually going to shorten the length of these leads here with a couple snips, just to make it fit into our breadboard a little bit better. So something like this. Alright, so now what we're going to want to do, remember we got a polarized part here. We've got our stripe here representing our negative. So because we're setting this up as a flyback diode for D1, we're actually going to be putting the negative into the positive rail. And this thing's function here is to actually essentially detect if you've got the reverse polarity, and that's going to draw it down to ground and essentially save our circuit here. Next, we got for C1, we have an electrolytic capacitor. This is going to handle some of our power filtering kind of noise and conditioning, if you will, for the circuit. Again, I'm clipping the leads here so that it goes into our breadboard a little nicer. Again, we got a polarized component here, and we've got the negative indicated by this little stripe here. So that negative is going to go into our negative channel, and the other side is going to go into our positive channel. We're going to place that guy right here. Now we're going to also, for you guys building at home, just so you know, we're going to be building this the exact way that the DIY guide is, that you'll be able to print out or work from on your computer. So you won't have to worry. It's going to be pretty much there. There might be a channel or two jumping, and we'll talk about that as well, because that's not actually going to matter here. It's all going to be about the cleanliness of the build. Alright, so we're on step 1, power filtering. We're going to do C3. Once again, we're going to cut this capacitor so our leads are a little shorter, like this. And this is going to be the last step for, or the last capacitor for this step here. So we're going to put this guy right here, just like it shows in the guide. And that simply is the first step for the 4-stage fuzz complete, and we're going to move on to step number 2. Alright, so we're going to keep going, and we're going to step 2, which is our input stage. It's also stage 1 here, since we're doing a 4-transistor fuzz pedal in the spirit of the Big Muff. So let's go to our input stage here. We've got 5 resistors, we've got a ceramic cap, we've got a transistor, we've got a passive film cap, and we've also got a little bit of wire for this step. So let's build right along with our schematic, right from the input for J1, which is our audio jack, and we're going to be going to the input female header so that we can jump to our actual breadboard, because this is where we want to be. This is the good stuff. Let's use our green wire, and we're going to jump into this circuit like this. From here, we're going to jump to R1. So that's going to be our input pull-down resistor at 1 meg. And what this is going to do is going to help switch popping that you would see on the toggle, or here rather, same with like in a guitar pedal, just to try to dump off something to ground to try to avoid that switch popping sound that we hear amplified through the amps. Plus it's also going to set our input impedance. We're not going to really get into that right now. That's something that you guys can check out on your own. But it does play an important role in this. We'll talk about it probably in the future. But for now, we're going to build this just like the guide. We're going to go R1 with our resistor, dumping over to ground. And as you saw again, I cut the leads of this resistor a little bit just to help so it's a little cleaner. We're going to try to practice some good breadboard etiquette here. Speaking of, this guy. Yeah, now we're rocking. Alright, so let's get to R2. We got to find our 33K resistor for R2. Now remember, in the guide, you're going to have a cheat sheet for how to read resistor codes. You can also print that out. The bag of components actually doubles as a resistor code as well. So, we've got our 33K. We found it. This guy is going to connect right to the input. We're going to cut it like we've been doing, just to keep it clean. Jump it as thus. Okay, great. So now we got to get to our input cap. We're on C2 if you're following along on the schematic. This one is going to be blocking DC but allowing AC to pass through. It's also going to help set kind of the most amount of bass that's going to be allowed into the circuit. This is actually a really fun component to try out with like our film cap sub box or maybe our film cap pack, because you get a lot of stuff kind of that follows through the rest of the circuit because of how the first stage is set up. So let's put this component in. If you have to clip, if you got longer leads, do so. If not, let's go right to it. Let's move this guy just so we're following along. Remember, greenies like this are also going to be a breadboarder's friend. Move this over a channel just to keep it clean. And we can follow it just like our schematic and our breadboard in the picture. Alright, so that's C2. That is in there, that's done. Next, we're going to have to get to our transistor stage. And to give ourselves a little bit of room, we're going to jump over there with some wire. So we're going to, again, take one of those pre-cut wires. We're going to bend it over. We're going to be jumping a few channels. And again, these don't matter here. These numbers, these are a reference for you if you want to, but different manufacturers have them oriented in a different way. So it's more so going to be about making sure that items are in the channels properly than what number they're in. If it works for you and helps you, by all means. I'm going to do my best to follow along with what the guide on the included guide shows. Alright, so we've jumped over to our area where we're going to be working with the almighty transistor. And I'm actually going to grab a novelty from off screen so that we can show you. Alright, so we've got this big guy as a reference to kind of show you kind of how this guy's oriented. So we're going to be working with our emitter, base, and our collector legs. The guy will also outline this, but these are really fun for educational purposes. So let's get back to our transistor. This is Q1. This is going to be the transistor for the input first stage that we're working with. We're going to orient this just like the picture with the flat side away from us as the builder. We're going to be putting this in, as you see, like the D channel if you want to call it that. And again, this doesn't really matter, but for cleanliness, let's just follow along with the picture, make it nice and easy. Okay, so we've got Q1 set. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to give this thing some power. This is from the power rail, and it's also going to be how we bias the transistor. Now this is preset, so you won't have to do any biasing here with trim pots, but I want to make reference to it. So let's jump over in our schematic to R5. So for R5, we're going to want to look for a 12K. 12Ks are nice because it's the same color both ways. So once we find the 12K in our batch, once again we're going to bend this over, and we're also going to trim it a little bit. We'll say halfway down. This guy is going to be feeding power to our collector. Now remember, we are working with this BJT, so we've got emitter, we've got base, we've got collector. And now this transistor is oriented this way, away from us, the builder. So the collector is our leftmost leg for the builder. So we're going to distribute power to the left leg from the power rail, which is red. And there we go, that's our 12K for R5. What we also want to do next is the grounding to the emitter. So again, going back to our novelty here, we've got emitter on the left, which means when we're building it, it's actually going to be over here. So we want to do the far right leg. Now that is going to be R6 for us. That's going to be a 100 ohm. Again, don't forget to have your cheat sheet business card size thing there. You can always pause the video. You can also just find an online picture too, whatever works for you. We're going to grab a 100 ohm for R6. This guy wants to go to ground. Again, this is going to be our blue channel up here on the power bus. So there we go. Greenies are our friend. Oh, I had it in the base. Let's correct this. Make sure we get that to the emitter. There we go. All right, so now we've got ground going to the emitter of our transistor, setting the gain and the bias here. So next the only thing left really is the collector. So the collector here is going to, the base here. The base is the only thing we have left to do for power or voltage distribution. Now the network is going to be R3 and R4 on our schematics. This is going to actually create a voltage divider here off of the collector that's already been conditioned with R5. So R3, R4, make sure you don't interchange these because that will change our voltage. Let's look for R4 first. R4 is going to be our 470K. Great. So 470K, I'm going to bend it over. We're going to cut it. Again, just like this. Now what we got to do is we got to get power distributed from essentially the collector to the base. And what we're actually doing on this is, instead of jumping it over with a really short channel here, we're actually going to sneak it over to the inside of this 0.1U, because as you see with this green cap, it actually distributes back to the base, so that's actually going to keep our build a lot cleaner. Let's grab our greenies. Let's angle this a little bit. And that's the collector. So we gotta jump from the collector to that capacitor. There we go. Now we've got to get from our base here, we want to find our 3, which is our last resistor. This is a 100K. Another bending, snipping, and we're going to place this guy to ground from the base, which is our middle leg. emitter, base, collector. Great. So now we've got voltage set for there. And what we're going to want to do is grab our last component, which is C4. This is a 470 picofarad. We're going to take this guy, cut a little bit off again. And now we've got to place this guy between the collector and the base of Q1. This is in the feedback loop, and this is actually taming a little bit of the shrilly higher end sound, kind of rolling off a little bit of those highs. And this is something you can adjust on your own if you feel so inclined. So let's go between the collector and the base and just follow along with the picture. We are going to jump to right here. There we go. Alright, so we've got the input stage, which is stage 1 of our 4-stage fuzz complete, and we're going to jump on to step number 3. Alright, so we're going to move on to step 3 of the 4-stage fuzz, and we're going to do the sustain control, which is going to control how much distortion we're going to get into this circuit. So we're going to only need a couple resistors and a couple film caps for this step. Let's build along with the guide. So we're going to jump out of the collector of the last stage that we just finished with a little bit of wire. Jump it like this. Okay, great. Now that's going to give us a little bit of room to work around a potentiometer, because that's our largest item here, and a lot of times when I'm breadboarding, I kind of base it around like an op amp or a potentiometer or something that is going to take up a good amount of space so that I'm not super cramped. Alright, so now that we've jumped out of that transistor, our first stage transistor, and we're going to go into the sustain control, we want to grab C5, which is a 0.1. Nice thing on this build is almost everything is a 0.1. So we're going to grab that, put this guy right here. Easy. Piece of cake. Piece of crumb cake. Now what we're going to do is actually put our potentiometer in. So the sustain control is going to be a linear B100K, and this is essentially like, think of it like the faucet, if you will, how much it's going to allow or cut off. This is going to be a variable, like it's a voltage divider essentially here, but it's going to kind of let the player say how much I want to let in from stage 1 into our next stages that we're going to build after. So we're going to follow along with our picture here. We're going to place our sustain pot right there. And next what we're going to have to do is limit what pin 1 does on this potentiometer. So what we're going to do is we got to find R6, and that's a 100 ohm. Okay, so here we are. We're going to follow suit like we've been doing. We're going to clip these leads about half. We're going to jump over a couple of rails from lug 1. On the other side of this resistor, we're going to use the black wire to go to ground. Bend it over, a little horseshoe. We're going to jump this into our ground channel. Now this essentially makes it so that this part of the circuit never goes fully to ground. If we've got the knob set at min, there's still resistance to ground here. Alright, we want to go out of the wiper for the next step. So a potentiometer, it's got 3 legs as we know. The middle is referred to as the wiper. We want to jump our channel here with some green wire. Now, again, remember, our channel here helps us to keep each side separated so that we can do more vertically here, and we can place stuff like ICs and the legs don't get messed up. So we got a little green wire. Gonna jump this over our channel just like this, and we're gonna go right into C6, which is another 0.1U. Place this guy in there, and that guy is gonna follow by a 6.8K. And this is going to be the very end of our circuit here for the sustain part. Alright, and that's it for the sustain section for this build. Let's move on next to the first clipping stage. Alright, so we're going to be on the next step, which is our clipping stage. This is stage 2, because we're basing this around a 4-transistor fuzz. This is the second transistor, also known as Q2. This is going to be stage 2. This is going to be our first set of clipping, coming right off the heels of the sustain potentiometer. So we are going to need a good amount of parts for this one. We're going to need some resistors, some wire, a couple of diodes for clipping. We're going to need a transistor, and we're going to go to town here. Alright, so let's go right down the line where we left off, and we're going to, much like on the first transistor stage, we're going to get our transistor because, again, remember, we're building around this. This is the core of this stage, so we kind of want to build the ancillary parts around what our core is. So this transistor we're going to place about here. Let's see. All right. There we go. And we're oriented the same way as Q1, where we've got this transistor and its flat side is actually facing away from us, the builder. At the top down, it's going to look something like this. We got our leggies right here. Alright, so we've got a transistor set. We need to get over to it from the end of our last stage here. So, just like the stage 1, we're going to start doing some biasing here. A little bit of tone filtering and some clipping. So, first let's go to giving the transistor power. We're going to find our 12K. Remember, that's our favorite one because it's read the same way. Alright, let's clip this. And let's distribute power to the collector. Remember, we're doing emitter, base, collector, left to right. Now, the flat side is facing away from us, so our collector is actually on the left for us, the builder. So we're going to distribute power, this time from the bottom rail here. So this is our power bus on the bottom. We've got one on the top, obviously. We're going to jump this 12K from power and go to the collector. That is going to be R11. Okay, so now let's go to the other side and do R12. Set the emitter. That's going to be a 100 ohm. That's going to be jumping to ground, and the relationship between the resistor on 9 volts and the resistor on ground is going to essentially bias our transistor for the most part. There's obviously biasing on the base, but this is going to be the biggest like push-pull, if you will. So we got to go to the emitter, which is going to be on our right leg for the perspective of the builder, which is us. So let's jump that to ground and jump to the emitter. Okay, great. So we've got R12 connected to the emitter of our transistor. So we've still got to distribute some power to the bass, just like on our first stage. This is where R10 and R9 come in, which our 470K and 100K respectively. So let's find our 470K. Let's clip the legs a little shorter as usual. And now we're going to do this little... Oh, actually, you know what? I missed a step. Thanks for catching that for me. We gotta jump over to the transistor. We built the area, we're gonna jump over to the bass. So let's quickly jump over to the bass. There we go. Alright, back to our 470K, R10. We're gonna do the same type of trick that we did on the first stage, where we actually kind of, you know, double back to early in the circuit, where it will actually come back to the bass. So again, we're just following the steps that are in the build guide, as you see. I'm going to try to build this the exact way. We're going to take this 470K and we're going to go between the bass, or the middle pin, and we're going to double back to the start of this green wire here. Collector. Sorry, we're going to go to the collector. Thanks for catching that again. That was awesome. Alright, so resistor is going to tie between the collector and this green wire, which is ultimately the bass. Okay? Not too bad. Now again, we're doing a voltage divider here, so we need to get another resistor to ground. We're talking about the base here, our middle lug of the transistor. So we've got our last resistor, we've got a 100K, that's going to be R9 on our guide, and this guy, we've got to get that to the base. Now this is an interesting part here, because we're working in this area here, this base. Again, emitter, base, collector. We've got to get to this base here, and we need to get to ground. It's a bit tight in this area, but as we see, this green wire here jumps over to this row. That's going to be the same as going into the base. So if you're following along with the guide, or even right here for the first time, we're going to use the right side of this green wire, which is acting as the base leg by extension. And voila! Now we've got ground to the base, and we're keeping the breadboard a little cleaner. So that's also going to help down the line if you're going to modify stuff with one of our sub boxes, or really just kind of get in there. You need a little bit more space to do stuff. Okay, so what's next? Oh yeah, the clipping. The fun part. The reason we're all here. But I lied to you, there's one more part. Alright, let's quickly get this part in so we can get to the fun stuff. Alright, we're just going to do a 470p in the feedback loop of Q2, just like Q1. The nice thing about this circuit is that 4 stages are almost identical, so it's kind of helping reinforce this topology here. So we just got to get this little guy between the collector and the base, and that's going to be right here. There we go. Easy. And once again, for reference, that was C8. Now we can have fun and we can go to the clipping. Alright, so we're going to do clipping with diodes which are polarized, and they're necessary to have in a certain orientation here. So we're going to have them in a symmetrical state, which is going to be like an opposite state. You can think of them like this. So as we know, we've got the band on them. That's our negative. We're going to orient them like this. Make sure that you don't have them in the breadboard like this. Just like that. So let's grab D3, D2. we're going to, well actually before we can actually get there, we're going to jump over the channel again. Alright, so we're going to grab a little bit of blue wire, little arc here, and we're going to jump out of the collector, because the collector is actually going to tie back to the base. So you're going to see how this works. So we go out of the collector, which is our far left leg from the perspective of the builder. Now that we're over the channel, we are going to go to our diodes. Now these diodes are only going to jump a couple of these channels, so we're going to keep them pretty tight here. Bend the leads right at the body. Give them a little clipping again. Place our first one right next to, let's see, next to that blue wire. Remember, orientation. We want to do it like this. So the breadboard will look kind of like this. So we grab our other diode, bend them at the body, quick little snip. Now we want to have our stripe towards the right. There we go. Now all we have left to do is C7. This capacitor is essentially going to allow AC to flow but stop DC like normal. That way voltage doesn't get screwed up at the base, but we still get clipping when the relationship between the collector and the voltage here essentially try to get past the other one. It'll end up being distortion. Let's jump this capacitor, C7. We're going to jump this back because we have to actually get down the channel. Let's put it this way. Last piece of blue wire in our step, so we can jump over the channel, because we gotta get back to the base section. Oop, I actually see something I jumped. Glad I caught that. I'm sure you guys caught that as well. Okay, back to the blue wire, because we have to get top row down to our bottom row. Okay, so on C7, where we're doing the distortion network, we're going to go from the diodes to this cap, back down here. Remember, this green wire was just an extension of our base, so now we've got our feedback loop. This actually kind of gives a nice representation of the feedback loop between collector and base. Now with that done, we have finished stage 2, and we're going to jump over to the next stage for even more clipping. Alright, so we're going to get into step 5, which is the second clipping stage, and it is identical to the previous one. So this is going to be really good to, like I said, reinforce this topology. So we got the same thing as last time. We've got some caps, we've got the main transistor, we've got some clipping diodes, we've got some wire. Let's get going. So we're going to pick up where we last left. We were on Q2, or stage 2. And what we're going to do is find our 0.1U. And again, almost everything is 0.1U, so if you grab one, it's going to probably be it. We're going to come off the collector of stage 2, which is the left leg towards the builder, or the perspective of the builder. And we're going to put this 1.1U there. Okay, great. So we've got that there. What we got to do is we're going to jump the channel again and build this next transistor stage directly behind the last one. It's going to look pretty identical. So, little blue wire. Let's jump down this channel. And let's see, we got R13, 6.8. Okay. So let's find R13, 6.8K. Let's trim it like we've been doing. Jump this right here. Greenies for the assist. Okay. All right, so 6.8. All right, so we're back to what I was saying before, spacing based around our core component. And again, in this example, it's going to be the transistor. So we've got to give it a little bit of space. We're going to jump over a little bit of wire. We're going to jump over to where we're going to be working, because we're going into the base. So let's see, we're doing it out of here, going to about there. Okay. We're going to go into the base, which is our middle pin. Looks like we're going into second row from the channel. And there we are. So now we are to the base of Q3, or our third transistor stage, second stage of clipping. All right, just like before, we're going to go into biasing. And we're going to start again with our 12K. This is probably starting to sound familiar. Once we find our 12K, don't forget your cheat sheet. Reading color bands. You've also got an index at the beginning of the guide. We've got to get to power. Alright, 9 volts through the 12K to our collector. Left leg perspective of the builder. Alright, let's get our 100 again. You've heard this, right? You've heard this before. 12K, 100 ohm. Here we go. 100 ohm. We're going to tie this. You guys already know. We're tying this from the emitter of Q3 to ground. That's going to be right here. Like that. Okay, great. So we've got voltage distributed from our collector and down to our emitter. But we got to do our base one more time. So the base, we're going to find our 470K. We're going to trim them. This is where we're going to do that doubling back jump. We're going to go from, I just realized, I have the pins backwards here on this. And you guys caught it. Thanks so much. We're gonna do, so let's do this for all three here. We're gonna move this feedback resistor to our base with our greenies. This is the beauty of having all the stages be the same. You can now make that quick jump. This Q2. Alright. Again with our 470. Increase our legs a little. Circle back from the collector stage. Go. Okay, got those two done. All right, so stage 3. Just making sure that we go from the collector. This is going to happen a lot when you're building you're going to find the transistor was in backwards, or you flipped the collector and the emitter. Sometimes fun stuff happens, sometimes nothing happens. So we've got to get from the collector, left leg, and we're circling back to this wire here. Up just to keep it clean. Okay, great. Now if you're building and you want to actually just jump between the two legs, if that works for you, if it makes more sense for you mentally, you can always do something like this where we bend the leg over. We often refer to it as tombstoning. That way you can just jump between the two legs. If that works for you, do that. If not, you can follow the guide and jump back like I've done here. Okay, so now that we've corrected the C11, C8, and R15, R10, and R4, just so that we're distributing voltages correctly, we can move on to the final voltage resistor, which is R14 in stage 3. So we've got to get our base to ground. This one's easy. You guys don't even need me for this one, but I'm going to do it anyway. Alright, so just like the last stage, we're going to copy what this guy was doing down here. Alright, all we need is our ceramic cap to go between the collector and the base, and we'll be ready to go to the clipping. Alright, so that was C11, our last 470p, between the collector and the base. Alright, so now we're on to clipping. And just like in the last stage here, we're going to be jumping our channels to do our feedback loop. Alright, so we need a little bit of wire. We're going to jump out of the collector here. Okay, now we're going to go into the diode. Again, we want to observe the polarity. Cut our leads a little shorter. First one, grab our second one, bend it at the body, cut this, and make the negative bands opposite of each other. There we go. Last thing we got is C10. That guy is going to go right here. Now all we need to do is grab a little piece of wire so we can jump the channel one last time. And complete our feedback loop. Alright, so there we have step 5 finished, and we're going to move on to step number 6. Alright, so we're at step 6 now. This is the second to last step, and this is going to be our tone control. The famous or infamous, if you will, tone control on our Big Muff-style fuzz. Alright, we've only got a few parts here and a potentiometer, so let's get to it. We are finishing up at our last step. We're going to come out of the collector as usual. So we're going to need a little bit of wire so that we can get to a fresh area to work. Like that. Now we want to find our 4.7 N. So here we go. Read as 472. Or yours may also say 4.7N. We're going to clip this a little bit. Place that guy right here. And then we're going to continue on the other side. So that was C12. Now we got to find a 33K for R19 that goes to ground. Here's a 33K. On the other side of this cap, we're going to jump to our ground. Okay, great. So that makes our that was our high-pass filter network, and now we're going to jump back on the other side. So we're going to actually come back to this side of the cap because we want to go to the low-pass filter side. So we find our other 33K, shorten the leads. This one's actually going to jump the channel. Go. Clean it up with the greenies. Now we got to find the other cap in this build, which is a 10N. Here we go. 103. That's a 10N. Yours may also just say 10N. We're going to put that guy right here. Grab a little bit of black wire. Bend this. Jump this side of the cap to ground. And now we've got our low pass filter and high pass filter here. Alright, so what we need to do next, we've got to get to the potentiometer. So in this, we have to get to both sides of the potentiometer. So the potentiometer is going to go right here. So that connects this side to lug 1, but we got to get over to lug 3 as well. So what we need is a little bit of wire. We're going to jump like this. There we go. So now we've got this filter jumping over to 3, and this filter jumping over to 1. Now, the wiper of the potentiometer, again our middle lug, that's going to be our output going out to the last stage. So we got a little bit of wire. We're going to jump out of that, so we have more room to play, and we're actually going to jump over to the other side of the channel because we've got a ton more space over there left. Because we have to do one more stage still. There's 4 of them. Okay. Jump out of that. Now, last cap in this step is a 0.1U. Place that guy here. And that is going to be the end for step 6. And all we've got left is our output stage for step 7, and we're going to be ready to rock. Alright, so we're at the final step. Step number 7. We're at the home stretch. We are at the output stage. So we've just finished the tone control, and the nature of this, we're going to actually lose some volume, so we're going to have step 4, or stage 4 I should say, be our makeup stage, volume makeup stage. So we got a potentiometer, last transistor, a couple resistors, and a cap. So last step that we were on, we kind of laid the groundwork of where we need to land for this step. So this last stage is built around, as you guessed it, a transistor. So we are going to go into the base of this transistor. So we got to get the base, or the middle pin, where we left off, which is right here at this 0.1U. Okay, great. So we've got that in. We've got C14 going to the base, or middle pin, of Q4. Once again, we got to do some power distribution. So let's start like we normally do. 12K. Yep, you already probably said it before I even got there. We got to do a 12K right on our collector. So we found our 12K. We got to get power to the collector, so that would be the power rail to the left pin from the perspective of the builder. So we're going to do just like this. Okay, so that's power. Now we want to go to ground, but it's not a 100 ohm this time. It is a 3.3K. Alright. Just got a 3.3K. So we can go from the emitter to ground. That's going to simply go right here. Alright, so we got ground going to the emitter, and that is our emitter and our collector voltages. Last thing we got to do is the base again. So we're going to do a voltage divider network. That's going to be R20 and R21. Again, we got the same culprits here, 470K and 100K. So we're going to make a simple voltage divider network to the base of Q4. So we got a 470K from hot to the base, and then we're gonna go, actually let's move this, no, that's okay right there. So what we're actually gonna do is a crafty little thing. We're actually gonna jump the channel here, and you'll see why in the build guide, because there's gonna be a ground source down there. So we've got the 100K going from base across the channel. We're going to ground with a black wire here. Okay. There we go. Now we've got the voltage divider on the base network. Alright, so what do we got to do left? We got to get from the output to the volume pot. That is going to be back at the collector. So the collector, we need to do our decoupling cap at the end, or our coupling cap at the end, to go from the collector like that. And we're going to have to jump over this rail, or channel I should say. Alright, so actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's put the potentiometer, like I was saying before, based around the biggest item of the area. So we've got that just made it. Just made it. Okay, our master volume is in without a row to spare. Now let's ground lug 1 of this. It's a little tighter here. Okay, lug 1 is grounded. Now lug 2 is our output, so our wiper is going to be going to the output female header, and 3 is going to be receiving the output of the circuit over here. So let's go from the end of the circuit. That would be the output of C15. It's going to go right there. And our very last piece of wire is going to connect from the wiper to the output pin headers here. And that is going to be the 4-stage fuzz, top to bottom. And now that you've built this, you've messed around with it, maybe you've adjusted some values, you've tweaked, maybe you've used some sub boxes, maybe you used it stock. Hopefully you'll experiment and add to this, or even remove. Some people really like to remove the tone control or bypass it with a toggle. Some people like to change the clipping diodes, different capacitors. It's a very modifiable circuit, and hopefully you can make it yourself, make it to your own flavor, have some fun with it, and we'll catch you on the next one, and thanks for building along with us.